One area that I look at is getting creative, right? The more partners you have, inevitably there's that interest in an email blast, that digital communication.
Welcome to Sponsorable, a podcast that brings together sports organizers and brand leaders to talk about the business of grassroots sports. I'm Garrett Shea, and I've spent the past 20 years in the youth sports industry, where I've built nationally televised sporting events and corporate sponsorship programs. I created this podcast to bring in experts from the youth sports industry and have them share what they do in the space and how they do it. On today's episode, we've got CEO Evan Dabby from New Jersey Youth Soccer, and we're going to talk about all things youth soccer, including what it takes to run a state soccer association, how Evan and other states are coming together to scale up the opportunities, and how they're delivering for their sponsors and brand partners. All right. Hey, Evan, thanks so much for joining us today. It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks. I've been up all night studying, so I think I'm ready for you.
Well, hey, we're just two New Jersey guys talking a little youth soccer, youth sports. I'd love to just start off. Maybe give us a sense of your background and how did you get in to serving as the CEO of New Jersey Youth Soccer?
Sure. So I grew up playing soccer my whole life in New Jersey. Had the opportunity to continue playing at college at Tufts University. So as you start to go from the college life to the professional life, you get involved in, whether it's interning or camp. So started to create that network for the next phase of life. Graduated, fell into an opportunity with Major League Soccer, the league office. A high school colleague of mine let me know about a job opening. Just get lucky, and that was there for 16 seasons in the early days of MLS, and from there had the opportunity to come back home to New Jersey in the role of executive director, and that was the start. And 10 years later, I still got it here.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, it's fantastic, especially to share with maybe, young aspiring, whether high school students, college students. There are so many opportunities in the business side of sports, and having you have a chance to get in as a former player and then getting into the business side, and then you start to be exposed and say, wow, there are so many opportunities to work in sports. It doesn't have to be playing, or it doesn't have to be coaching. There's all different types of jobs that you can serve in.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and that was the idea of one of our programs, a student mentorship program. There's a grant that we received, so we offer about a dozen students per year a chance to get involved with us, primarily college students. So it's the professional development. We do some webinars with industry professionals, from Red Bulls to World Cup to Gotham to marketing and all those spaces. And then you get the practical experience coming to our events and helping out and networking. So what you said is a perfect encapsulation of what that program is. And we tell interns, you got to start somewhere. And even those who have graduated, when they're looking for it, just get dirty, put your hands out there, find out how to get involved. And if you do the right things, good things happen. That's
very well said. And we follow the same suit. So, as the CEO of New Jersey Youth Soccer, maybe talk to us a bit. I'll take a step back. As I look and I put on my agency hat and I put on my, as I look at my career, it was probably more recently, the last 3 years, that I started to get involved in the world of youth soccer. And I will say that hands down, without a doubt, youth soccer is the best organized sport in America. And it hurts me because I come from a tackle football world. So it's, I would have hoped to say, hey, football is really well organized. But really, youth soccer has figured it out. You guys do a great job from a membership standpoint. You do a great job from creating state championship events, state teams. I think it's from, the most complete youth sports kind of operation. You have professional staff that lead your different state associations. And I really tip my hat to U.S. Soccer and U.S. Youth Soccer because they've ceded all of the power, at least in from my point of view, to the states to say, states, you know how to run the sport at the state level. You know how to build it, find the right people, create the right programs, and that's where I really tip my hat. I'm in awe of the youth soccer world because of how you've organized the sport. So go ahead.
Yeah, you were saying that, and I won't get the quote exactly right, so he'll forgive me at some point. But Fred Lipka, who oversees all of the development on the soccer side for MLS, I've heard him say that the future is local. Now, I'm missing a word there, so he'll forgive me at some point if he hears this. But it really resonated. I think MLS and U.S. Soccer and U.S. Youth Soccer, they have an incredible responsibility, incredible reach, and a role that they play that can't be replicated. But I think what you spoke to is a lot of that. How do we facilitate? How do we empower? More locally. So those teams come through, and we even, live that in our. We're about connecting and empowering our leagues and our clubs. So we even got to get more local than we are. So it's about ultimately being on the field, and the closer you are to being on the field, the more influence you can have. So I think all those ideas just really align with what you were talking about.
Yeah, and the power, and especially this show is sponsorable, and we're talking about the business of grassroots sports, and so one of the key kind of business points that I always try to make, especially when talking youth soccer with brands, is like a state association like New Jersey Youth Soccer can literally push a button and reach 175,000 people, parents, coaches, club directors. That power, that communication infrastructure is unlike anybody else, and that's just parents across the state of New Jersey. So I think that's such a powerful aspect. Maybe talk us through things like your membership and and the state championship program, that state cups, and your state teams being the Olympic development program. I'd love to kind of share a little bit more insight with our listeners just about the operation of a state soccer association.
So what I think is, call it cool, is the breadth of programming. So we have something called Top Soccer, which is a program for players with disabilities. And we're fortunate that that's close to 1,000 players, and they register for free, courtesy of our support from RWJ Barnabas Health. And around that, it's just inspiring. We have 55,000 rec program players in programs across the state. We have the competitive travel leagues. That's another 55,000 players as we sit here today. We have the state cups that about more than 1,000 teams, one of the biggest in the country across all competitions in our state cup divisions, compete for a state title. Some go on to compete for a regional title. Some go on to compete for a national title. And each year we've had at least one of those, and that's exciting. And we have our Olympic development program, as well as our Young Olympians program. Our Young Olympians is for 11, 12-year-olds, community-based, locally get a feel for what ODP is. And ODP services about 600 players across the state, across a bunch of age groups, for those that are looking for that identification and opportunity to be selected, not just for the state team, but again, for the U.S. Youth Soccer Interregional Team and the National Select Pool. So the programming is from uber competitive to the participation based and everything in between.
And that's the beauty of it. It's the full breadth, the complete soccer experience, from the rec side to the competitive travel side to the really elite side in the state cup teams and President's Cups teams, to the, hey, I want to play for the state of New Jersey as a member of the Olympic development program. And that's what, I look at what you've built, and you have something for every soccer level, and every soccer, kind of aspiration. What am I trying to do in the sport of soccer, which I think is fantastic. Now, being in New Jersey, you're, obviously, I'm sure, looking forward to having the World Cup come to the U.S. And the World Cup championships come to New Jersey. What are you doing right now to work with kind of the World Cup committees and
Yeah.
organizations?
The World Cup's coming in Jersey. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a story. It's gotten some attention, and it was cool to be popular that day. It was announced, and felt like somebody thought I had tickets or something. So put that aside. It's a priority, and we're lucky. Not just the finals and all the games at in New Jersey with the New Jersey host committee, but I don't want to forget about the 6 games in Philadelphia, because those of us from New Jersey know that there's a portion of New Jersey that is just as much Philadelphia as it is anything else. So we're probably in the best place in the world come World Cup time, and our membership is lucky. We're lucky, and we're trying to be relevant at every point in the way. So, couple examples. Last year, the Premier League came through with some cross promotion, and we got really engaged with the host committee to host some clinics for coaches. So that was cool. Um, and then whenever we have an opportunity, there's an open dialogue, and I'm fortunate. I reach out to them, they reach out to us. We collaborate on a couple things. Youth Soccer Day at MetLife Stadium the day after the Gold Cup final, and what was it? A couple hundred kids and members of New Jersey Youth Soccer got to be on the field, as we said, hours after Messi was kicking it, and that's unique. Um, we had uh, Cafu, the Brazilian legend. His agent reached out last summer and said, "Hey, interested in getting a clinic together?" Partnered with our new member rec program in Hoboken, our World Cup host committee, and others got engaged with shirts and giveaways, and again, a unique experience. They've been great with their presence at our awards dinner and our annual meetings. And the last is where I think it goes in the future is I know there's a commitment to mini pitches and building those. So we couldn't be more excited to be a partner, and that is part of its legacy. So for years to come.
Yeah. Now let's talk about your partnership program or your sponsorship program. Obviously you've been at New Jersey Youth Soccer for quite some time. Kind of when you entered New Jersey Youth Soccer, how was your sponsorship program?
The evolution of the state associations, I'll just speak to my 10 years. It feels like a different business. So when I started, so this was let's put 2014, we had 2 partners in the Red Bulls and Adidas. And there really just wasn't a concentrated effort. I don't feel like there was a huge appetite from an association perspective to really try to scale and service and engage on the sponsorship side. There really wasn't, an interest in communicating with our members about partners and emailing offers, and culture changes, right? So, that's just evolution that should occur. I think we all look to evolve constantly. It also speaks to the evolution of the staff and the board, and a credit to, our board of directors. It's really a concerted effort in that time to go from an operational to a strategic, a volunteer board to support the staff and the professional staff and to do the day to day. So we always had soccer minds on our board, but what I see now versus 10 years ago is more of the business minds. So there's a lot of ways to measure success, but if we just talk about sponsorships as a topic here, I think a metric to look at is I estimate we increased sponsorships and revenues and commitments in those 10 years by about 600%. So that's one metric, but it's become something from the background to something of the forefront.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at your sponsors right now that you have listed on your website, and I mean, it is some great brands. It's RWJ Barnabas Health, as you had mentioned. It's Jag, it's Score, it's Prime. I mean, you've got a great list of portfolio, if you would, of partners. Maybe talk about some of the different partners and what they're currently doing to activate and engage with your members.
I think it's worth just talking about how you get there, and then certainly love to talk about some of the specifics, but I almost want to start with what you need. I mentioned we didn't have the resources, didn't have the focus to do that, and it was before you even have the sponsor, before you service those and talk about what you do with them, you got to get them, right? So we didn't, for the first few years, it was me in my role and finding time to, try to solicit sponsors, and it's not easy. We I know that, I've learned it. So we all know that very often in lives, time is the number one resource. So we had to look internally and say, how do we get there? How do we go beyond the two sponsors? One, I could keep trying to get things done with the other tasks on under my responsibility. Two, hire staff, or three, outsource. And we ended up making a strategic move to commitment and outsource that responsibility for sponsorships, sales and solicitation, and there's plenty of reasons for that. But beyond that, we also had to commit to the activation part of it. And I'm sure we'll talk about how you get sponsors involved. But I think it's worth sharing. You get I'll call it, let's use the number, $10,000 sponsorship from a brand. We, in our minds, know we got to set aside 10, 20% of that to activate, right? We need to make sure, that we have the resources, the staff to do what's needed, because it's so often on the social and digital communication side. Just the administration, you have an agreement with X deliverables. Like, you need to make sure that you're tracking that. So you need administration. And even software. We just identified a software and Pando partner to help us do this, because as we get more involved and as we want our sponsorships to be, deeper and more meaningful, we need to deliver on that. So I know I started somewhere else, but please follow up and direct me anywhere else you want to go with that.
That was excellent, because I mean, you identify it, very well, and that is, to go out and get those sponsors is such a tall task, especially in the world of grassroots sports. I think there's a lot of folks out there, executives, that would say, "Well, hey, just go get a sponsor." Well, it's not that. It's not that simple. One, two, I think a lot of brands that don't probably understand how sophisticated youth sports has become, and how, at the end of the day, they're not just, youth sports organizations are not just going to do stuff for value in kind anymore. Like, you've got to come to the table with some sort of a marketing sponsorship dollar amount, and you've got to come to the table with an authentic, activation. Because that's the other piece is, at the end of the day, there is not there's not a big enough check in the world, for you to just, basically, offer up all your members and spam your members, right? It doesn't do anyone any good to sit there and send out, repetitive emails about, sales emails about a brand. So brands have to not only be committed to bring sponsor dollars, they have to be committed to think about, how am I going to activate in an authentic way so that the New Jersey youth soccer parents embrace me. They don't just see me as a, hey, and I'm getting this sales pitch again from brand X, because that becomes a turnoff. And I think so. There's a lot of brands that don't understand that, first of all. And then second, I think there's a lot of probably sports organizations, sports leaders that don't understand how hard it is to not just find, to go out and sign sponsors, but to get dollars from them and to get ones that are committed. Because it does, being in the sponsorship game, I look at it and say, we've got to build a long-term book of business for organizations with the right brands. It can't be 1 year and done contracts. It can't be, hey, I'm just going to come in and spam your list. I've got to build an actual real sponsorship program. And that's where, what you just said about the activation allocation is spot on. Not there are not enough leaders out there that are saying, hey, I'm going to get this $10,000 check, and I'm actually going to make sure that I am managing the assets, delivering, have somebody servicing them. I mean, there's too many organizations that take that $10,000 check and just kind of cash it and don't look back. Right. And so I look at it and say, man, that the organizations that are committed to fulfilling and activating and thinking through are the ones that are not just going to have success in year one, but they're going to be building something that's going to attract more brands. So
Yeah. Do you mind if I touch upon that?
yeah, please.
So the reality is I've seen is every partner is different and requires a different approach. Candidly, some partners are very active in saying, "Well, here we go. Can we do this? Can we do this?" And some are more passive. So, for those out there, recognize that when you do have a brand, a partner that's more passive, this is our philosophy. You got to be proactive and make it happen. So you got to make sure you are engaging and make sure you are over delivering. But you know, it's easy when they're active. And I think of Jag Physical Therapy. We just had our awards dinner uh, maybe 2 weeks ago, and they took full advantage. They had a film crew out there. They had their CEO there, and they saw an opportunity and jumped. We had the fortune of some big names there: Tab Ramos, Tony Miola, John Harkes. We talk World Cup '94, nothing bigger than those three, and Aleko Eskandarian, all these New Jersey legends. And the CEOs out there, and they're set with their branding, uh, recording, and that stuff. Hopefully, just crushes it on the Instagram reels when they get there. So when a brand is proactive, it's good. It's good for both of us because that is message and our event is out there. And you know, I always my philosophy is to try to over deliver when we talk with our staff about our partners. I always say that our partners and their contract should represent the minimum of what we're doing. And you always look at that to make sure you don't miss. But I want to make sure we engage with partners every time we have an event. And you sign a contract in January, by the time May rolls around, your business looks different. So, example, we'll have a foot golf event this summer for, really for participants who are disabled and special needs. And the benefits of that event will go back to the top soccer program. So reaching out to all of our partners to get involved because that might resonate with them. Score Sports is going to provide the T-shirts for the players and the volunteers. So you just always engage them everywhere. And I guess if there's a sign to suggest how we're doing, at least recently, we feel like the trend for the renewals is about 20 to 50% increase on the sponsor commitment. So I like to think that that approach is contributing to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you bring up a number of great partners there and their activations. From the Jag example, they're actually coming out in person, bringing a film crew, capturing key moments, generating content, and then and that's where I look at and get excited as a partnership person. They're going to be driving those messages on their social and marketing channels, and that's the quintessential partnership. It is they're capturing content from your great awards event with your great players, and then they are magnifying it across their channels, and that truly is a winning formula. And then you have others that where you're driving the program, like foot golf, and RWJ Barnabas Health is benefiting because they're the presenting or naming rights partner for the top soccer program, which is benefiting from that. And then you've got somebody like a Score who's really endemic. And so they're the perfect partner because, hey, anywhere there's soccer activities, it should be really easy for them to activate utilizing their marquee product. Um, and that's one of as I look at strategies for how are brands activating, that activating with product is such a critical critical strategy, critical tactic, if you would. And I feel like there's not enough brands that Score. It's a little bit easier because they send you the gear and it's branded Score. Maybe the other folks, it's requires them to put the energy in. So like maybe we talk about a little bit about Prime and how they've activated.
So I'll give two examples. They went big at our state cups, and they had a whole team out, and it was our 11 to 14-year-olds, and I think that's a good spot for them. So I was a little bit concerned that the players coming for the state cup finals were going to get sidetracked and just hang out and get their prime and do their thing, but we managed to get him on the field, which was a bonus. But after we had it set up where after the games they come to the awards area, they get their photos, and then they go able to get a giveaway from Prime. So the engagement and the excitement, I mean, that's how I kind of gauge it. Sometimes is just see the reaction, right? So that was a really good spot for them, and we got a lot of photos and images that'll help capture and tell the story. And then, we're learning that that touch point has been really important. So they also provide a product at our awards dinner that I mentioned. We had 1,000 attendees. All the kids had a chance to go get their Prime bottles. So you have pictures of proof of them displaying and showing their happiness when they get that gift. So our role, I feel for our partners, is to give that opportunity, that point of entry, that introduction, and that philosophy with Prime of just looking at our targeted events to make that connection has been successful.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that about Prime because I saw some of the coverage of that event, and you've got the Prime bottles, kind of strategically placed, and I thought that was fantastic. And what really got me interested is that then all of a sudden I saw other state soccer associations almost like look at what you did, and then at their awards sessions you saw a Prime strategically placed there. And so that kind of sharing of information, that learning, is something that I'm once again I applaud the soccer world, because that's something that I think soccer does so well, and that's you learn from each other. And there's 54 state soccer associations across the United States. I'm sure not all of them are learning from each other, but you see the ones that say, hey, they have Prime as a sponsor. They're looking at how you're activating, and then they're using best practices, or some of your best practices, and I'm sure you're using others. Maybe talk a little bit about the coordination amongst state soccer associations.
Yeah. And I think of there's something called the United States Consortium of State Associations, Garrett, if you don't mind me touching upon that, because I think that
Please.
speaks exactly to your question. So I'd call this a startup, and it's for me, it's the first startup I've been involved in like this, and it's a case study. So a bit of background. There's a group of state associations that I might say unintentionally set out to alter some of the history of how state associations operate. So been in the role for 10 years, and I always felt coming in, and I just didn't know the business. That's the honest truth. It came from the professional world of soccer, and I thought I would know youth soccer, and I didn't. And it hit me over the head. I just needed more information, and from others, from colleagues, and it wasn't as easy as I thought it should be. We all operated independently. Through technology, through COVID, it really forced our hand on how we communicate. But at the end of the day, I kept going back to this independent, approach. Just doesn't make sense. State associations, the great luxury is that we're doing the same thing. We have the same business, but no competition. I'm not trying to solicit a player from Pennsylvania to play in New Jersey. Certainly not trying to solicit a player from Idaho to play in New Jersey. Like the setup just makes it perfect for collaboration. So this group of colleagues, we saw an opportunity to align and scale each other's businesses. So what started, I'd say, organically with maybe 6 or 8 state association, and it has grown now to 16 state associations in this consortium, and they're just value and logic. So along that path, uh, as it was growing, we recognized an opportunity, probably a need to formalize it. So the USCSA is the acronym, was born, bylaws, policies, and all that fun stuff. I think it's novel. It's certainly new. It's definitely tough, but we're really finding success, and proof of concept is a big deal. And I think we have a handful of those that we can touch on.
Yeah, no, and have you been able to do any kind of well, one, when I think of kind of these larger scaled up opportunities, especially, and I'm familiar with the consortium, when you have, and I believe it's 16 now, 16 state soccer associations. You've got tremendous scale, right? I just look at New Jersey, knowing some of your numbers, and then I know some of the numbers of some of the states that participate in that consortium. But I mean, there's millions of parents, coaches, players that the consortium represents. Maybe talk about a something that you've done from a commercial business standpoint with the consortium and a brand.
Uh, yeah, so the numbers, we estimate about 1 million players that we represent from a membership perspective. Certainly, there's coaches, so it goes beyond that. So it like any startup, I have to imagine like how you do that and how different businesses collaborate. It's not quite like merging hospital systems, but I got to figure there's some of those similar challenges that you face. So it took a lot of work, but you learn how to work together when you're committed. So a couple proof of concepts. Our first partnership for the consortium was Inspire Sports. There's a few components to it, but it involves fan trips. Uh, people going and recently completed a trip over to England. So it was a digital promotion. Signed up, the trips sold out immediately, like overprescribed. So you start to realize there is an appetite for this, and we're going to build upon that success. And I see a whole schedule over the next few years of trips for our members to take advantage of that want it. So another and a different one. So it was exciting. This is a different proof of concept was King's Hawaiian. That was purely digital activation, email offer, social media, and we figured out how to do that to reach hundreds of thousands of members across the country. Again, how do you work through those different processes? And I think proof of concept is valuable. I mentioned Pando Partner. We have six of members of the consortium who are using that solution. We have an upcoming announcement about the newest part of the consortium that'll provide an e-learning platform. And I'll mention one more, which in some ways is the most exciting. Is It's a six-figure grant from U.S. Soccer's Innovate to Grow program, and it's specifically to support our growing the girls game initiative. So I think every time we have a success, and every time we tell about that success through LinkedIn profile, it does garner some more interest. So the future and the opportunity for this consortium to scale is really exciting.
That is, I mean, certainly the scale, and that's what I think a lot of brands, look for is they definitely want to test something, say, hey, is this going to work? But then have the ability to quickly scale, and that's what as I look at the consortium, it really is a great kind of second step for a brand. So a brand comes in and maybe does a deal or two with different state associations, and then can say, hey, I want to go from 100,000 players to 1 million, and I can do so with the state soccer consortium, and that's just like that instant scale, which I think is very attractive for a brand. And my guess is it's just going to take some time for brands to become aware that that is an option, right, out there. So, uh, well, you'd mentioned a couple of different kind of groups that the consortium had worked with. You know, what do you think as you look and think about partners? Like, what are going to be some challenges that you feel like the consortium will face when it comes to partnership?
I think one area that I look at is getting creative, right? The more partners you have, inevitably there's that interest in an email blast, that digital communication. But we're very wary. One, we'll have a database of north of 200,000, I anticipate, come fall. And you want to be very smart about how you use it. And like you said, you don't want to keep spamming. So we want to find other ways to engage because you just can't rely on that email database, day in and day out, to leverage it. That's just not what that database is for. However, I feel comfortable that when we do commit to, that digital communication, that there's value, there's an offer, there's a special incentive. So it's not just awareness of something. There's a real purpose that, as a whole, you can feel that there's value for your members, and it's not just a sponsored deliverable. There's something that has value.
Yeah. And there is probably, as and I know you mentioned that 200,000 email addresses, which are the New Jersey. Clearly, there's a much larger database when it comes to the state consortium opportunity. But and I'm sure it's also like, at the end of the day, it is one of the challenges that I would probably foresee is that, like, New Jersey, you have Score as a partner. Another state might have somebody else. So it's getting those, and it's probably that creativity on categories, right? What are the right brands that aren't going to create issues across 16 different entities? And I'm sure not everybody, I know not everybody has Prime, not everybody has Score. So it's probably looking at and saying, okay, hey, what are some new categories that we can look at? The I hope the good news is that with World Cup coming, every brand is saying, "Hey, what are we going to be doing around soccer? How does my brand become a soccer brand, or at least, more authentic in soccer?" And it can't be a month before World Cup I air a soccer commercial. It's got to, they've got to start now in building those inroads into soccer.
Yeah, I think it, it it'll touch upon I'll touch upon what my hope would be in this space, right? We can't We're not starting from scratch, right? We've all been in our places with state associations for some years, but a vision is, and remember this from my days at MLS, you have, call it, national categories and local categories, right? There's certain categories that the consortium, as an example, with planning, say, hey, we're going to just leave this open on a national, if we not to the extent we consider that a national level, and there are others that are going to be retained more locally. So, you can't just flip the switch because we all come in with these pre-existing deals, but that's the future that I see, is making that distinction. And that's an evolving business, and that's a mature thing, and we've talked about it, but it takes time to get there.
Yeah, no, that is exciting. And I mean, that leadership and forethought, I mean, that's exactly, I mean, that's a great point. And not many executives are thinking that way. The other note that you mentioned, which I hear so often from brands, are how am I going to activate and engage with around female sports, women's sports. And you mentioned something about growing the girls game. Maybe share a little bit of insight about that program.
Yeah, I'll start with the why part. We know that data tells us that the participation amongst girls is less than that of boys, just the sheer percentage of our membership. So something isn't balanced. We know that's important, so we wanted to invest in that space. So developed a brand that's pretty flexible and nimble, and we've branded that "Growing the Girls Games" G3. I mentioned the consortium got a grant to put in that space, and it really allows us flexibility when an opportunity comes. So I have to think of Gotham FC, who approached us with their Keep Her in the Game initiative. Same area, same interest. They obviously want to see girls getting in the game. Unbelievable collaboration. They had a huge launch, earlier this season. We had hundreds of members of the girls on the field for the display, video board, walk out with the torch lighting, huge media opportunity. And that came because we aligned, right? There's just the like interest. The other recent sign of success is they look to expand the participation in the Keeper in the Game initiative. I believe they've maxed out. Like they went from 100, I believe, is up to 1,000 participants between players and coaches. And through that registration, I've learned they've they've reached their limit of what they can do in phase two. So we know there's more to do. We haven't solved it, but the Keeper in the Game is a long-term, partnership. And it's exciting for New Jersey Youth Soccer is there's resources that they're putting into it that we just don't have yet. but that's the idea of partnerships, right? We have a database of people that they needed to get involved, be it the players, the coaches. That was a turnkey thing for them. They have an infrastructure and resources that they're using, like the partnership. You couldn't hope for more out of that.
That's great. Yeah, I mean the two pieces as I look at soccer in the next couple years, is really looking for brands that are going to be activating, with the women's game, and how do we get more, to your point, how do we get more girls playing soccer, and excited about playing it and keeping them in the game. And then two, clearly it's brands that are saying, hey, for the next probably couple years, what am I doing to become a more authentic soccer brand and start to really connect with the soccer communities across the United States? And I would say, 5 years ago, that conversation was not being had with brands. I think, the World Cup coming to the US is accelerating that conversation, which I think is great for the sport. Um, we've talked about a lot of great things I think that are coming. Maybe talk about a challenge that you see for youth soccer on the horizon.
We're deep into strategic planning and looking at kind of execution on some strategic imperatives. And for us, because we're a nonprofit, a focus is diversifying revenue. Sponsorships is a huge part of that. We are extremely proud that we haven't raised our fees in 10 years. That's not an easy thing to do, because costs tend to increase, be it insurance or just, the general infrastructure. So, we're gonna hold true as long as we can. And a big part of that, is, like I said, diversifying revenue. Sponsorships has been a key part, and I think we can even go further. Obviously, as we show what we can deliver in value. I think there's also grants. So for us, getting creative, right? Maybe it's a different type of program. We've mentioned you have top soccer, rec, travel, but there's probably a different way of playing the sport that'd be fun and keeping people engaged. I know basketball has their 3v3 and golf has done its own innovation. I think there's a flag football obviously comes to mind of something that's been creative. So I think of what the next evolution of soccer will be. I think the core of it's not going to change. I think it's just too ingrained and too successful and too amazing when you look at the World Cup and the Club World Cup and all the stuff that happens. But I think on the youth side, there could be an evolution of the game.
Evan, if folks want to get in contact with you or learn more about New Jersey Youth Soccer, how do they do that?
Certainly on social at NJU Soccer across all platforms, and on our website, njusoccer.com.
Great. And I assume that folks can look you up on LinkedIn as well?
I am there.
Great.